Tonight is not only Shabbat, as I mentioned, but a holiday not as well known. That's biblical. Shemeni Atzeret, which literally means on the 8th stop. As the Bible presents it, at the end of Sukkot, there should be an additional day, Shemini Atzeret, and it should be a day that's a holiday, a day with no work. For Passover, the first day and the last day in the Bible are sacred days, days of no work, as is the holiday of Shavuot, the other pilgrimage holiday. It's a one-day holiday. But in the diaspora, outside the land of Israel, the custom evolved that there is an extra day, a day to be sure that the calendar is right. And in that regard, this morning was the 7th day of Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah. But it's not considered one of those days that you're prevented from working, which is true of the 8th day. In Israel, Shemini Atzeret is one day, tonight and tomorrow. But outside of Israel, Shemini Atzeret becomes 2 days, almost like a bookend of days you don't work at the end of a major pilgrimage holiday. Shemini Atzeret has very little ritual. There is no description in the Bible of what you're supposed to do on Shemini Atzeret. You're no longer required to dwell in the sukkah. It just says it's a day to dedicate to God. Interestingly, over the 7 days of Sukkot, there are 70 bulls brought in decreasing order. 70 for the rabbis represents the number of nations of the world. It's a symbolic number. 7, a wholeness, times 10. So as to say that for Sukkot, God's focus is on the entirety of creation, just as it is for the sages for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is not tied to a historic Jewish event, nor is Yom Kippur. It's the day in which God judges the whole of creation like a shepherd. And so Sukkot maintains a universal theme, although it does have this historic component of the dwelling in the booths upon leaving Egypt on the way to the Promised Land. 70, universal, messianic, a prayer of a world in harmony. And as the rabbis understand it and explain the significance of Shemini Atzeret in the Talmud, they say, God says to the people of Israel, Ki'ilu, as if God says it to the people of Israel, I, on Sukkot, have celebrated a wholeness, a prayer of harmony for the world, that you as my chosen people, the facilitator of a world of harmony, have done with you, with the offerings you brought, but on behalf of the world. And now, as a parent, you are getting ready to leave me. The holidays are coming to an end. Atzeret, stop, linger, one more day. Enjoy my company, not as a universal time of offerings, but bring one bull, the bull that represents the people of Israel, which means we are reminded that as a Jewish people, as we celebrate our holidays, we do so for a universal God, and yet do so as a people with a mission to be an exemplar of righteousness, a people who through that modeling of righteousness, so the rabbis teach, becomes a motivator for other people to honor the goodness of God, the oneness of God in the world. Only in the 10th century was there a major ritual added to Shemini Atzeret, to the ritual that started earlier. So let me start with the ritual that started earlier that you will see over Shemini Atzeret, and that is a rain dance or a rain prayer that with the ending of summer and the beginning of fall, as the season changes, there is a prayer for Israel for rain that was identified as a ritual distinctive to Shemini Atzeret. But in the 10th century, that earlier rabbinic ritual was supplemented by the celebration of Simchat Torah. Why in the 10th century? Because before then, there was not necessarily an annual Torah reading. Yeah, they read Torah every Shabbat, but the cycle of being an annual Torah reading was a Babylonian custom. And the Babylonian rabbis only became the dominant purveyor of Jewish practice with the Talmud in the 6th century out of Baghdad and the growing influence of the Babylonian Jewish leadership. In Israel, until that 9th, 10th century, the reading of Torah was a triennial, a 3-year cycle. And so as the Babylonian rabbis became the dominant leaders of the world Jewish community, and their custom of an annual cycle became normative even for Israel by that time, what emerged was a calendar celebration of the completion of the annual cycle of reading Torah, the dancing with Torah, and beginning over immediately that cycle of reading, that there's almost no gap between coming to the end of Torah as Moses stands and bids farewell to the people as they get ready to move forward, but not yet moving forward. That's not till the next chapter of the book of Joshua. We don't get to the promised land. We start over with creation. And so tomorrow night at 7:15, we're going to have a wonderful Simchat Torah celebration, because tomorrow night will be the second night of Shemini Atzeret, and likewise on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, Simchat Torah. And tomorrow, there will be, as part of the service, that beautiful melody that we'll hear more of, I hope, tonight, because I was so tempted, just Carl, to say, just keep it going. That could be our whole service, that beautiful melody. But tomorrow will be the reading of the book of Kohelet, which normally is done on Sukkot, but because tomorrow is quasi-Sukkot, first day of Shemini Atzeret, we'll also be reading from the book of Ecclesiastes. And because it's a holiday, we'll be chanting Hallel in addition to the celebration of Shabbat. Ribono Shalom, Master of the universe, we pause to take in all the holidays that we've shared. We pause knowing that the holidays will end within a couple of days. May we savor this time of celebration. Amen.